May the 2nd, 1957, 10:54 p.m. Bumpy Johnson was tired. He'd spent 3 hours in Frank Costello's penthouse apartment discussing territory disputes, police payoffs, and the upcoming Appalachian meeting. Business, always business. Now, at 10:54 p.m., Bumpy just wanted to go home to Harlem, pour himself a cognac, and sleep. They walked through the lobby of the majestic apartments on Central Park West, one of the most expensive buildings in Manhattan. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, doormen in tailored uniforms. Frank Costello walked beside him, 66 years old, gray hair slicked back, navy blue suit, diamond cufflinks catching the light. The Prime Minister of the underworld, the most powerful mobster in America. "Bumpy," Costello said as they crossed the lobby, "I appreciate you coming tonight. The Genovese situation is getting complicated." "Vito wants your seat," Bumpy replied quietly, "and he's not going to wait much longer." Costello smiled, tired, resigned. "I know, but I'm not ready to retire just yet." They reached the center of the lobby. Costello turned toward the elevators. Bumpy turned toward the front door. That's when Bumpy saw him, a man standing behind a marble pillar near the elevators. Fedora pulled low, long coat despite the warm May evening, hands in pockets. Bumpy recognized him instantly. Vincent the Chin Gigante. Vito Genovese's most trusted killer. The man who'd murdered at least 15 people. The man who never missed. And he was staring at Frank Costello. Time slowed. Gigante's right hand emerged from his coat pocket. A .38 revolver. Barrel rising. Bumpy was 10 feet away. Costello's back was turned, walking toward the elevator, completely unaware. Gigante's arm extended. The gun aimed at the back of Costello's head. Bumpy had 2 seconds to decide. Option 1, do nothing. Watch Frank Costello die. Vito Genovese would become the new boss. Maybe Genovese would be grateful Bumpy didn't interfere. Maybe Harlem would benefit from the power shift. Option 2, warn Costello. Save his life. But Vito Genovese would know, and Genovese didn't forgive. Bumpy's mind calculated faster than thought. If Costello dies, Genovese becomes unstoppable. He'll move on Harlem within 6 months. No negotiations, just occupation. If Costello lives, the mob is divided. And a divided mob is a controllable mob. 1 second left. Gigante's finger tightened on the trigger. Bumpy shouted, "Gun!" Everything happened in 3 seconds. Frank Costello spun around. Instinct, survival, decades of avoiding assassination attempts. The movement saved his life. Vincent Gigante fired. Bang! The bullet grazed the right side of Costello's head, a searing line across his scalp, blood immediately streaming down his face. But the shot that should have killed him instantly missed his brain by 2 inches. Costello collapsed to the marble floor, conscious but stunned. Gigante's eyes snapped to Bumpy. Rage, surprise, calculation. Then he turned and ran toward the side exit, but he wasn't alone. 8 men emerged from the shadows, from behind pillars, from the stairwell, from the side corridor. All wearing dark suits, all drawing weapons. Gigante's backup crew. And they weren't running. They were attacking. The doorman dove behind the reception desk. One of Gigante's men, a thin man with a scarred face, raised a .45 and fired at Bumpy. Bumpy dropped to the ground, drew his own .38 from his shoulder holster, and returned fire. 2 shots, both hitting center mass. The scarred man stumbled backward, crashed through a potted plant, fell. Costello's bodyguards, Two men who'd been waiting outside in a car burst through the front door, guns drawn. The majestic apartment's lobby became a war zone. Gunfire echoed like thunder in the enclosed space. Marble shattered. Crystal chandelier fragments rained down. Bullets punched through wood paneling. Bumpy crawled across the floor toward Costello, who was bleeding but trying to stand. "Stay down." Bumpy grabbed Costello's shoulder, pulled him behind the reception desk. Costello's hand pressed against his head wound. "What the hell?" It was Gigante, Genovese's man. "You're lucky to be alive." "Lucky?" Costello looked at the blood on his hand. "This is what lucky looks like?" More gunshots. One of Costello's bodyguards, a thick-necked man named Paolo, dropped two of Gigante's crew with a shotgun blast. Another of Gigante's men vaulted over a leather couch, firing a revolver wildly. Bumpy stood, aimed carefully, and put a bullet through the man's shoulder. He spun, crashed into a mirror, shattered glass cascading across the floor. 5 of Gigante's men down, 3 still fighting. Gigante himself was at the side exit, trying to unlock the door. Bumpy raised his .38, sighted down the barrel. Easy shot, 20 feet, Gigante's back. But Bumpy didn't fire, because killing Gigante wouldn't solve anything. It would make Genovese furious, but wouldn't stop him. The war would continue. Instead, Bumpy aimed lower. Bang! The bullet hit Gigante's right calf. He screamed, collapsed against the door, clutching his leg. 2 more of Gigante's men rushed toward the side exit to help their boss. Paolo cut them down with his shotgun, both men falling in a heap near the stairwell. The last of Gigante's crew, a young man, maybe 25, terrified, dropped his gun and raised his hands. "Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" Bumpy gestured with his .38. "Get out. Tell Vito Genovese what happened here tonight. Every word." The young man ran. Silence. The lobby was destroyed. Bullet holes in the walls, blood on the marble, shattered glass everywhere, 7 bodies on the floor, 5 dead, 2 wounded and groaning. Vincent Gigante was slumped against the side exit door, bleeding from his leg, face pale with shock and pain. Bumpy walked slowly across the lobby, gun still drawn. Gigante looked up at him. "You should have let me finish it." "Maybe." Bumpy knelt down, keeping the gun pointed at Gigante's chest. "But then what? You kill Costello. Genovese takes over. And 6 months from now, Genovese decides Harlem's next. And I have to fight you all over again. This time with no allies." Gigante spat blood. "Vito's going to kill you for this." "No, he's not." Bumpy reached into Gigante's coat pocket, pulled out the .38 revolver Gigante had used, examined it. Then Bumpy did something Gigante didn't expect. He ejected the cylinder. 5 bullets remaining. 1 spent casing. Bumpy pocketed the spent casing, the bullet that had grazed Costello's head. "What are you doing?" Gigante asked. "Insurance." Bumpy stood. "You're going to tell Vito exactly what happened, that you missed, that Bumpy Johnson saved Frank Costello, and that if Genovese wants to start a war with Harlem over this, I have evidence. This bullet, witnesses, everything that'll put Vito on trial for attempted murder." Gigante's eyes widened. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Bumpy smiled. "Costello's the most powerful mobster in New York. The police commissioner will investigate this. The FBI already has a file on Genovese. 1 bullet, 1 ballistics match, and Vito goes to prison for 20 years. Is that what he wants?" Gigante said nothing. Bumpy leaned closer. "Or Vito can accept that Costello survived, that I'm neutral, and that if he leaves Harlem alone, I won't testify. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. Bumpy stood, walked back to the reception desk where Costello was sitting, still bleeding. "We need to go," Bumpy said. "Police will be here in 2 minutes." Costello nodded slowly. "You saved my life. I saved both our lives." Paolo helped Costello to his feet. They moved toward a service exit, the doorman pointing the way, silent, terrified. As they left, Bumpy looked back at Vincent Gigante one last time. Gigante was staring at him with something between hatred and respect. The message was clear. This wasn't over. But it also wasn't beginning. Not tonight. 20 minutes later, St. Luke's Hospital. Doctors stitched Frank Costello's head wound, 14 stitches. The bullet had left a groove across his scalp, but hadn't fractured his skull. Incredibly lucky. Costello sat on the examination table while a nurse bandaged his head. Bumpy stood near the door, arms crossed. "You know what this means?" Costello said quietly. "Genovese isn't going to stop." "No, but he's going to be more careful." Costello looked at Bumpy. "You had a choice back there. You could have let Gigante kill me. Would have made your life easier. Or harder. I don't trust Genovese. At least with you I know where I stand." Costello smiled slightly. "Pragmatic. I like that." He paused. "You kept the bullet casing. Evidence. Against Genovese? If I need it." Costello nodded slowly. "Bumpy, I owe you my life. That's not a small thing in our world. So, I'm going to tell you something. The commission is meeting next week. Appalachian, New York. Every boss, every family. They're going to vote on whether to force me into retirement, whether to let Genovese take over. And I'm going to tell them what happened tonight. That Vito sent Gigante to kill me. That you saved my life. And I'm going to propose something." "What?" Costello met his eyes. "That Harlem is officially off limits to all 5 families. No interference, no takeover attempts, no more wars. Bumpy Johnson runs Harlem independently, and the commission respects that." Bumpy said nothing for a long moment. "They'll never agree to that?" "They will, if I make it my condition for retiring peacefully. If I walk away without a fight, Genovese gets what he wants. But I want something in return, and that something is you." "Why?" "Because you're the only black gangster who's ever outplayed us. And I respect that. More importantly, I owe you. And Frank Costello always pays his debts." Bumpy looked at the bandage on Costello's head, at the blood still on his collar. "When's the vote?" "November 14th, Appalachian. I'll hold you to that promise, Frank. I know you will." 3 days later, Vito Genovese's social club, Little Italy. Vincent Gigante limped into the back room, leg heavily bandaged, leaning on a cane. Vito Genovese sat behind a large desk. 60 years old, silver hair, cold eyes. The man who wanted to be king. "Well?" Genovese's voice was ice. "I missed." Gigante's voice was flat, defeated. "You missed?" Bumpy Johnson shouted a warning. Costello turned. The bullet grazed him. He survived. Silence. Genovese stood slowly. "You're telling me that Bumpy Johnson, a black gangster from Harlem, saved Frank Costello's life?" "Yes." "And what did Bumpy do to you?" Gigante swallowed. "Shot me in the leg. Let me live. Took the bullet casing. Said if you come after Harlem, he'll give it to the FBI with testimony. Costello shooting. Your name attached." Genovese's face went dark. "He's bluffing." "Maybe, but Costello's alive. The police are investigating. FBI's already asking questions if Bumpy testifies. He won't." "You sure about that, boss?" Genovese stared at Gigante for a long moment. Then he sat down, poured himself a glass of whiskey. Bumpy Johnson just declared himself untouchable. What do we do? Nothing. For now. Genovese drank. Costello's going to use this. He's going to tell the commission that I tried to kill him, that Bumpy saved him, and he's going to call in favors. And Harlem stays independent. For now. Genovese's voice was bitter, because the cost of taking it is too high. Gigante nodded slowly. Bumpy played us. No. Genovese leaned back. Bumpy played everyone, saved Costello's life, threatened me, and walked away with exactly what he wanted, independence. Gigante left. Genovese sat alone, staring at the whiskey glass. He'd underestimated Bumpy Johnson. It was a mistake he wouldn't make again. November 14th, 1957, Appalachian, New York. The commission meeting. 58 mobsters gathered at Joseph Barbara's estate, the largest meeting of the American Mafia in history. Frank Costello stood before them, white bandage still visible on his head. "Gentlemen," he said quietly, "I'm retiring. Vito Genovese will take my seat on the commission." Murmurs around the room. Surprise. Satisfaction from Genovese's allies. "But," Costello continued, "I have one condition." "What condition?" Carlo Gambino asked. "Harlem. It's off limits. Bumpy Johnson runs it independently. No interference from any family. No soldiers, no operations, no takeover attempts. Harlem is his." "Why should we agree to that?" Genovese demanded. Costello turned to face him. "Because Bumpy Johnson saved my life 3 days after you tried to kill me, Vito. And because if you start a war with Harlem, you won't just fight Bumpy. You'll fight me, even in retirement." Silence. Tommy Lucchese spoke up. "Costello's right. We've been trying to take Harlem for 20 years. It's cost us soldiers, money, reputation. Maybe it's time to let it go." Carlo Gambino nodded. "I agree. Bumpy Johnson has proven he's more valuable as an ally than an enemy." One by one, the bosses voted. Harlem, independent. Bumpy Johnson, untouchable. When Bumpy heard the news, he didn't celebrate. He sat in his office above Small's Paradise, holding the bullet casing, the one that had grazed Frank Costello's head. Illinois. Gordon sat across from him. "Boss, you did it. The mob's backing off. Harlem's ours. For now," Bumpy said quietly. "For now?" Genovese didn't agree because he respects me, Illinois. He agreed because Costello forced him to. And Costello won't be around forever. "So what do we do?" Bumpy set the bullet casing on his desk. "We prepare. Because 2 seconds. That's how long I had to decide whether to save Frank Costello. 2 seconds that changed everything." "You think Genovese will come back?" "Eventually, but not today." Bumpy smiled. "And not tomorrow. So for now, we protect what's ours. We build, we prepare. And we remember that power isn't about who's strongest. It's about who's smartest." Years later, 1969, 1 year after Bumpy's death. A reporter interviewed Frank Costello, retired, living in Florida, 78 years old. "Mr. Costello, there's a story that Bumpy Johnson once saved your life. Is it true?" Costello smiled, touched the scar on the side of his head. "May the 2nd, 1957. Vincent Gigante shot me in the lobby of my building. Should have killed me. Would have, except Bumpy Johnson shouted a warning. 2 seconds. That's all it took." "Why do you think he saved you?" "Because Bumpy understood something most gangsters never learn. The enemy you know is better than the enemy you don't. He saved my life because keeping me alive was strategically smarter than letting me die. And the mob never went after Harlem again. No, because after that night, every boss in America understood. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just another street thug. He was a strategist, a kingmaker, the man who could save your life or end it with 2 words. What were those 2 words? Costello's smile widened. Gun. Just that one word, actually, but it was enough. Do you think Bumpy Johnson was a criminal or a protector? Costello looked out the window. He was both, and that's what made him dangerous. May 2nd, 1957. 2 seconds, 1 decision, 8 bodies. Vincent Gigante tried to assassinate Frank Costello. Bumpy Johnson shouted a warning, and in doing so, he didn't just save a mob boss. He saved Harlem, because the war that followed, the 8 dead men in that lobby, the bullet case in Bumpy kept as insurance, the commission vote that granted Harlem independence, all of it started with 2 seconds and one man's ability to calculate faster than a trigger pull. I really want to know, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. This story has reached readers on every continent, and I'm always amazed by how far these legends travel. Drop a comment. Share this story. Let's talk about it. See you in the next one.